Alright everybody, and welcome back to the Cyclonic Thrift channel. Today I've got a special deck build for you. Once again, going to my own collection, pulling out the archives, trying out a new commander here. And this is a commander I've never built before, Archelos Lagoon Mystic. He's 1 black, green, and blue for a legendary creature turtle shaman, 2/4. And he's got a super simple ability. As long as he's tapped, other permanents enter the battlefield tapped. And as long as he is untapped, other permanents enter the battlefield untapped. And on its face, seems pretty generic, pretty vanilla. Not really a whole lot going on there. But once you realize that this can turn into a one-sided slowdown mechanic, right? Super flavorful. This turtle is going to try to slow down your opponents. All their lands enter tapped, all their creatures enter tapped, all their mana rocks enter tapped, treasures enter tapped, anything that they could possibly want to use on the turn that they play it, they're not going to be able to use. And so there's some room for some really powerful effects here, as long as we can control when Archelos is tapped. And we're able to take advantage of being able to put our things in untapped and take that advantage over our opponents. So to start, we want to go with those cards that will help us control when our commander's tapped and when he's untapped. So the first one in that section is Kelpie Guide, 2 and a blue for a creature beast 2/2. You tap it to untap another target permanent you control, or you tap it to tap a target permanent, and you activate only if you have 8 or more lands. So this is super easy. You can use it on the commander whenever you want. Use it on a different card if you'd prefer. The other one is Kior's Follower. Very similar effect, where Kior's Follower is a green and a blue for a creature merfolk. It's a 2/2, and you tap it to untap another target permanent. So again, being able to choose when and where a commander is tapped or untapped is going to be super helpful. Next, we want to engage cards that normally, they provide a benefit and effect, but normally that effect is mitigated by things coming in tapped. So for a lot of ramp spells, right? So like Migration Path, it's 3 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So you pay 4 mana to get 2 tapped lands. In any landfall deck, or really any deck specifically, this is something that's super helpful. But if you can pay 4, get those 2 lands on the battlefield untapped, and be able to use that mana immediately, it halves the cost of this card, and immediately just skyrockets it into competitive level play. It's gonna revolutionize a ton of ramp cards we've got in this deck, including the next one here. It's Shigeki, Jukai Visionary. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know I love this card. It's 1 and a green for a legendary enchantment creature, Snake Druid, 1/3. You pay 1 and a green and tap it to return it to your hand. You reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You put a land card from among them on the battlefield tapped, and then put the rest in your graveyard. Right? So this is basically a rampant growth cost spell that gets the land in untapped, basically. So, and if nothing else, it helps you sift through the top 4 cards of your library, put some things into your graveyard. We do have a decent amount of graveyard interaction in this deck, so even if you're not hitting that land every time, you're still getting the value out of it that you need. And then we want other cards that are interested in being tapped or untapped or whatever. So Traxos, Scourge of Krug, 4 mana legendary artifact creature, construct 7/7 with trample. It enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during your untap step. And whenever you cast a historic spell, untap Traxos. So of course, we've got some artifacts in here, we've got some legendary creatures that can help untap Traxos. But if we've got Archelos out and he's untapped, then we play Traxos and he comes in untapped normally. And so you've got a 7/7 trampler for 4 mana that you can use as a blocker right away and then be able to swing with on your next turn. Not to mention all the cards that we have that can untap creatures and permanents that we control. And in a similar vein, we have Endbringer, 5 and a colorless for a creature Eldrazi, 5/5. You untap Endbringer during each other player's untap step. You can tap it to deal 1 damage to any target. You can pay a colorless and tap it. The target creature can't attack or block this turn. And 2 colorless and tap it to draw a card. So a lot of versatility here, a lot of repeatability. Again, being able to untap it on everybody's untap step, super helpful. But we'll, again, with the cards that we've got running, we're going to be able to untap it even more. A couple times on our turn and then everybody else's turn. It's going to bring us a lot of value over the course of a game. But then finally, I want to touch on what I'm really excited to play with this deck, and that is all of the tapped lands that are super common in budget, right? These are kind of our way of fixing our mana without spending a bajillion dollars on fetch lands and pain lands and shock lands. I mean, cards like Dismal Backwater, where it enters tapped and you gain a life or whatever. Things that normally are not really viewed as high-power cards because they come in tapped. But with Archelos, we can get around that, and we turn our Dismal Backwater into, you know, an untapped Dimir Painland or whatever. So Dimir Aqueduct, normally it enters tapped, and you have to return a land you control to its owner's hand. With Archelos, it enters untapped, and you can use that mana right away. Evolving Wilds, you know, a famous sort of mana-fixing budget card, really helpful in a lot of decks, but the downside is the basic land you get enters tapped. This way it enters untapped, and you get access to that mana right away. And then cards like Myriad Landscape, which I'm super excited to try to play here. So not only does it enter untapped if Archelos is untapped, but then you can pay the 2 and tap it immediately, right? Instead of having to wait a turn. Sacrifice it, get to the 2 basic land cards, and then they enter the battlefield untapped. So you get to play this card, pay the 2 mana, sacrifice Myriad Landscape, get the 2 lands immediately untapped. It's a net 0 in terms of mana cost. And it's just a great way of ramping you, fixing your mana, and getting through your deck. So that's really what I'm most excited to see with this deck is how the mana base just drastically improves over a lot of budget-based decks that you see. But yeah, with that, I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, this was a deck pulling up from my own cards. This was not your normal every card under $1 criteria. It was whatever fit the deck, whatever made the most sense. If there are cards that you know that fit really well in Archelos deck, please feel free to share in the comments down below. Give this video a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. And with that, guys, until next time, stay thrifty.